Hello and welcome to the 1895 podcast with me, Thomas D.
And me, Rob Cockerell.
Rob, how are you? It's been a little while since especially since we've done a podcast here back in the gasworld offices.
In the studio, yeah, back in the studio. Good, thanks, it's year end, isn't it? I've got the festive jumper on, but that's lost on listeners, of course. Festive jumper on, it's year end. We're looking back on so many different things this year, so many different talking points and topics. I think good. I'm missing that heat from Bangkok. I'm missing the high from the event and the awards, actually.
Well, maybe in this episode of the podcast, we can relive that a little bit and regain that slight high as we're approaching this really busy end of year here.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, how are you anyway? Are you feeling good post-event?
Yeah, feeling, as are you, very, very festive, I think. But yeah, it was a fantastic event, I think. One of the highlights of the year in terms of the event, I think, especially as you said, those awards. We won't touch on too much on that in this podcast, but listeners can go back and watch our webinar that we held looking back on those, can't they, on gasworld.tv. But they were fantastic, weren't they?
Undoubtedly one of my favourite things we've done this year or for a long time even. And that whole kind of end of year feel and tying up loose ends, I've only just done my Instagram post about Bangkok, reliving that a week or so later. And of course, a couple of LinkedIn posts about the event and the awards, which were just a huge high, I felt. Yeah.
And of course, this event was a couple of weeks ago. Now it feels like we've been back in the office for much longer than I'm sure we have. Yeah. So it'll be good to listen back to some of these clips and some of the speakers we had. So I think we should do that right now and probably start with our opening keynote, which was Anthony Grandpierre of Mesa, which you were very pleased to secure, weren't you?
I was delighted to secure that. Always great to get a major player like Mesa involved in these events, but also to get someone like Anthony that is based in Thailand. He splits his time between Thailand and Vietnam, to get that actual feel on the ground. I always think that's really important, to get someone from within the region, within the market, and very topical and relevant. And Anthony absolutely ticked all the boxes on that.
And he even cracked a joke about why is a French person on stage discussing the APAC region. But he's got a host of experience and knowledge within the region, hasn't he? So let's listen back to a little bit of him where he discussed the challenges of business in the APAC region.
Southeast Asia for us is important. Why? Because this is a big market. It's 1.3 billion inhabitants and an average age of 30 years for people here. So we are in a very dynamic population, very dynamic region. Consumer market is the fourth biggest in the world after India, China, and Europe. So it's even more consumer than in the US. And with a GDP of 4.2% forecasted for this year, so this is also a very dynamic region. So you can find growth here, which is also very interesting. And it's a region where and it's forecasted to $240 billion investment, foreign direct investment in the region, which is continuously increasing around like 4% compared to last year. But what are the key challenges? Because this is the context. Looks like a very interesting region, but that's not always easy to do business here. So I'm going to share what are my key challenges here. The first one is growth challenge. Growing is good, but this brings a lot of challenge for us also. It's also a very geopolitical strategic region, Southeast Asia. Everyone is coming here. Everyone want to have his influence. So it brings also some impact on our business. So I will share a little bit about that. And then we are a German, European company, so we also have to follow some framework, some legal framework like the ESG. I will just take this example and how we can manage to implement, let's say, this regulation here in this region. Southeast Asia for us is important. Why? Because this is a big market. It's 1.3 billion inhabitants and an average age of 30 years for people here. So we are in a very dynamic population, very dynamic region. Consumer market is the fourth biggest in the world after India, China, and Europe. So it's even more consumer than in the US. And with a GDP of 4.2% forecasted for this year, so this is also a very dynamic region. So you can find growth here, which is also very interesting. And it's a region where and it's forecasted to $240 billion investment, foreign direct investment in the region, which is continuously increasing around like 4% compared to last year. But what are the key challenges? Because this is the context, looks like a very interesting region, but that's not always easy to do business here. So I'm going to share what are my key challenges here. The first one is growth challenge. Growing is good, but this brings a lot of challenge for us also. It's also a very geopolitical strategic region, Southeast Asia. Everyone is coming here, everyone want to have his influence. So it brings also some, let's say, some impact on our business. So I will share a little bit about that. And then we are a German, European company, so we also have to follow some framework, some legal framework, like the ESG. I will just take this example, and how we can manage to implement, let's say, this regulation here in this region. Sorry. First is the growth challenge. So yes, it's a region, as I told you before, who is growing, more and more investment. There is it's the foreign direct investment here is holding up well, very resilient, benefiting from the supply chain diversification, the China plus one strategy of many companies. In Thailand and Malaysia, we have a lot of investment, especially around data center at the moment. In Vietnam, it's more on the manufacturing because it's still a country where labor and power is cheap. And in Indonesia, we have seen like a big investment on large natural resources because this is a large country with a lot of resources, natural resources. So what are our challenge for that regarding the growth? For us, what is difficult is that it's a very competitive market. The prices are very cheap, the prices are very low, but in the same time, this industry who are moving here, they are asking the same level of requirement, of purity, of technology, the same as in America and in Europe. So we have to provide cheap, same quality, and in a very short time. So all that makes things complicated here. The first challenge is also on safety. We want to bring the same safety level and culture and standard that we can have in the other country because safety is our priority. HR, we need for sure to recruit people, young people, but we need also to provide education, develop the talents. In some of this country, in Southeast Asia, it's very diverse. It's not all the country, but people don't have the same level of education that you can find in some other regions, so you need to accompany and to develop that. Technical, I told you before, timing, budget, we need to stay very competitive. Climate, building a plant in some region here is quite a big challenge for us also sometimes when you design that. Climate in Southeast Asia is already not the same climate as in China. The humidity and everything can bring a lot of challenge. Logistic, infrastructure, not perfect everywhere. Some countries like Indonesia, Philippines, a lot of islands, so a lot of challenge that we don't have in some other region. Operation and productivity, as market is very competitive, prices are very low. We also need to bring all the time productivity, improvement, automation. So it's not only, our industry is not so labor intensive, so it's not on the labor we can make big savings. So we need to bring also productivity and with some AI, some digitalization project here in Southeast Asia. It's a very capital-intensive industry. This is not new for you. So there is also a lot of projects everywhere, but we have to control also where we invest, where we put our money. So we need to be very careful on the risk management, on selecting the project, where we want to go, where we can go. And finally, the administrative procedure is not the region where it's the easiest way to get the license. It's so fast, and sometimes you can lead to some corruption issue. One of the example here, maybe we can cut the sound because it's going to be noisy, is one of the example is safety. Look at that. Yeah, delivering product everywhere in the region. Here it's in Laos. So in Laos you don't have the perfect road, but yeah, sorry. Moving new factory in some countries is good, and we want to supply, but some are supplying without considering that you need to train your driver, you need to educate, you need to be careful because they are not transporting pomelo or durian, they are transporting dangerous goods. And this is what happened in front of our truck on the way. This tube trailer finished in the mountains. So growth is good, but at any price, be careful on safety. So we don't want to deliver, let's say, everywhere at any price. So that's a challenge here in the region also. Geopolitical challenge. We are in a region, look, we are surrounded by big power. India, China, Japan, Korea, US, Europe. Everyone wants to have his influence inside our region. And as a net importer from China, but a net exporter to the US, ASEAN finds itself, let's say, in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. And in addition, we don't have the most stable politically region. Some countries are in war, some countries government are very changing. So all this brings a lot of uncertainty, sometimes on the investment decision, and also strategic alliance visit of this president, then we are going to change it, and the other one is coming, so there is some other promise. So it's like the bamboo diplomacy, which is the picture in Vietnam. But what is good in ASEAN is that they have a very strong diplomacy. They are so different countries, but when it's necessary to defend their interest, they are very strong. And this is why at the moment we manage, after this, let's say this, how you call that, Liberation Day, April 2, we had a lot of big tax in ASEAN, and you see that after a few months, it's still higher level, but Mr. Trump, President Trump came, I think, last month in Kuala Lumpur, and we already reduced this tax. And you see that ASEAN also have to, has the power to negotiate and to be around the table. So in Southeast Asia, this brings a lot of new opportunity of new investment because everyone wants to have something in ASEAN, to have his, let's say, his power, his local diplomatic power, but it also brings a lot of instability for the decision makers. During the last 6 months, a lot of project has been delayed, suspended, because they still don't know if it's going to be the final picture, if something is going to change next week. So we have seen many of our projects just like wait and see. Or some project, okay, let's move to the US and we will invest in Vietnam or in Thailand maybe next year, maybe in 2 years.
Anthony Grandpierre there of Mesa. He was fantastic, wasn't he? We could have played so much of that opening keynote because he covered so many grounds and went into real depth on those challenges too.
He did, and in the Q&A that followed as well. And I think something I find interesting is when we record these pods and we look back, it's often a week or 2 weeks after the event. It's interesting to see what has stuck with you in that time. So what resonated, what's still fresh in the memory. For me, with Anthony, it's how honest he was. I think how raw some of the talking points were and how much he knew the region. That really stuck with me, I think, because he just knows it inside out, and he wasn't afraid to go there when it came to, look, we need to sort out safety, we need to get on top of this, or hey, this trade and tariff situation has been a bit of a nightmare. You know, he went there and he tackled it all.
Yeah, fantastic to hear from him. And then we went straight into session one, and I think we should bring our listeners, both of our speakers here, because they both gave their knowledge and shared their knowledge on the market dynamics and the growth opportunities within the region.
So, a lot of value, yeah.
Yeah, in this session we heard from Aidan Sparrowhawk, our colleague here at GWGI. We also heard from Yuki of Energy Iceberg, who we spoke to recently, again, on a webinar to discuss electrolyzer manufacturing in China. And both of these talks gave a great update on the market and a real scene setter for the event ahead.
Okay, so let's get cracking then with the regional profile. So first of all, putting Asia Pacific into context, so the global industrial gas market is around about $100 billion. Our data at GasWorld Intelligence, we put Asia Pacific at around about 30% of that. But what I think is really quite striking is the shape of that if we look at the sub-region level. There's huge concentration in North Pacific. Around about 3/4 of the Asia Pacific market comes from here. And actually, if we dive even deeper than that, China, we think, accounts for about 45% of that market, with Japan bringing up another sort of 15-16% of it. So actually, we've got real story of concentration here. Moving outside of North Pacific, we have Southeast Asia, the next largest by size, but obviously a much more fragmented market. Then we have South Asia and Oceania, which also bring meaningful size with India and Australia both being individually comfortably over $1 billion each. So that's the global view. Let's look at some of the other themes that we'll talk about today in this presentation. So we have a region that's sort of set to outperform the global growth. If we look from now to 2030, we have high production in oxygen and nitrogen, but also, and specifically, across all of Asia Pacific, but more of, and as we heard Anthony Grandpierre then talking about Thailand, more sort of production of, or sort of a higher percentage production of some other gases in the south. We have overall production, looking at the how, is really shaped by the kind of the captive production that we see in the North Pacific. We have a growth story in terms of demand shifting more towards high-tech and healthcare. We have demand really sort of being pushed by three sectors, which is sort of an interesting picture to unpack a little. And then we have, looking at the producers, we have a tiered marketplace with 3 global majors holding around about half of the total revenues. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour for what's coming. Let's jump into it. I'd like to start with the sort of the overview, the sort of the general growth of the region, because I think that this sort of tells a story that allows us to sort of set the scene for the whole presentation, really. What you can see here is you can see the individual market growth of a lot of the markets within Southeast Asia, and that thick black line in the middle is the overall Asia Pacific. And what's sort of the first key takeaway really is that thick black line is set to grow at a sort of compound annual growth rate of around 6% to 2030, which is higher than global. So already we're in a market which is posting some impressive growth numbers. But then if we look a little deeper, you can see obviously there's a huge amount of variability within that. And one of the key stories I think is India, which you can see there in that blue line at the top of the right there, looking to be sort of almost double digits, around about sort of 9-10% compound annual growth to 2030. So that's really exciting, I think. And then looking beyond that, we see sort of stability at a sort of a lower level in North Pacific. That brings, as I said, stability to the region. Southeast Asia is a much more varied picture, which sort of, again, is a timely reminder that Asia Pacific isn't just one story. Moving into the production side, I mentioned sort of heavy production of oxygen and nitrogen, and as you can see, sort of the overall shape is skewed a little bit by the North Pacific, where the majority of the volume is. We have kind of, in the North Pacific, we have high production of oxygen and nitrogen, and sort of relatively speaking, those are the major production sites. In the rest of the region, we have a much more balanced picture. Moving on then from the overall regional picture to talking about some of those individual markets then. I'll start with India, which, as I've said, really is a market shifting into a really exciting growth cycle. For example, with the expansion of manufacturing, the focus on clean energy, some of which we've already heard today. I think that's a really exciting picture, and we anticipate more opportunities in green hydrogen, in the energy transformation. I was seeing the interest, the opening, the words in the opening video talking about ASUs 2 years ago, and obviously we've heard a little bit about that as well. There's a lot of talk about that at the moment, and how many of those will be these kind of captive installations. Some of that will also help kind of trickle down to sort of local merchant supply, and also kind of growing local industrial capacity. And finally, for India, the sort of that positive macroeconomic outlook we talked about really, I think, provides opportunity for investment in transportation, logistics, in infrastructure, in gas generation generally. China I guess is a slightly different picture. You've definitely got growth there. We see growth in the electronics side, but also the lower growth certainly as we look to 2030, lower growth in those sort of legacy and heavier industries. And I think broadly this sort of provides opportunity for China to sort of deepen its presence in the high purity and the specialized gases applications, whilst also focusing on those kind of innovation-led sectors that provide longer-term potential. Meanwhile, we see sort of tight supply and the sort of general overall sort of stable demand, meaning that providers have this opportunity, maybe even this need to differentiate themselves via their ability to find and deliver efficiencies. And finally then, well, within my time, which is nice, finally I'll look at Thailand, and we see it as a sort of a growth opportunity, and I was thinking, as I was hearing Anthony talking about this as being a lower growth, it's definitely lower growth than India, and looking at my numbers were focused more on the overall market, I think. But there's definitely growth there, I think, outperforming global and slightly outperforming Asia Pacific. Where we see the demand shifting here, again, Anthony, I think, mentioned this, is sort of a shift towards food and beverage and healthcare. And so the final point here, and I was sort of reading about this in the lead up to this coming here, I think there's some really exciting new opportunities out there in Thailand. I think carbon capture and storage, specialty gas. But what I think we see, and speaking to my colleagues in our editorial team, I think this is a picture that's sort of played out in many of the neighboring markets as well, is that sometimes these new opportunities sort of grow ahead of the infrastructure, ahead of the regulation required to sort of support that growth. So there's some real opportunities there, but also there's a timing risk, which I think Thailand will need to manage in order to maximize the realization of those opportunities.
I want to start with the question that the green hydrogen and renewable, and perhaps in the industrial gas market, the key question is that where exactly is this green hydrogen development or green hydrogen boom currently we are in is heading to? Is that really the disrupted technology or energy transition for the next decade to go? Because currently we are in a hydrogen 4.0 wave. This is not the first time the world is promoting green hydrogen, and it's the fourth time. And the previous 3 times that the world didn't really have green hydrogen to a scale that is reached to a global economic of scale. And so the question is that, is this going to be different in this way? At this point that we see hydrogen has become a global phenomenon, I think, since 2021. But the question is that the economic, is it really there yet? And that leads us to Asia Pacific. This is a very diverse region, and I learned a lot today already from the two speakers of the Asia Pacific's diversity in terms of for industrial gas. And in hydrogen is no difference. We're talking about Japan and Korea as the major market. They are initially, Japan is the one to kick off this current wave, and Europe as well, of green hydrogen development. But right now, more and more the anchor seems to be importing green ammonia for the local energy supply. And then we have Southeast Asia that hoping to use these resources to turn it into green molecule, and with the main aiming to be exporting those potentials. However, technology and investment is the bottleneck. Then we have India, who is rising as more and more promising with its clean energy and renewable resources, and with the rising of manufacturing and investment, looking to be a very promising forces of pushing forward green hydrogen development. And China, in our point of view, stand out, given that it has a hydrogen ecosystem. What are we talking about? China is the only market currently that have the upstream, which is the renewable sources. It has the world's leading renewable sources, and it has cheap electricity. And then it has its leading electro technology and electro technology manufacturing. What we're talking about, it is not only renewable manufacturing, but also electrolyzer and other manufacturing. So it can have the potential to reduce costs. And then it also have a downstream market that everyone probably here knows better than me, that it is a major consumer for hydrogen due to its chemical industry, petrochemical industry, and the iron and steel industry that all require using hydrogen as a gas. So it has the element of from upstream manufacturing to downstream. And the matter is that whether China is the one to propel the industry, especially in current background, that when the world, there are more and more people are doubting whether hydrogen, green hydrogen is that or not. I think it's very important to know that development of China, currently more and more people believe China will be the major forces to push forward green hydrogen development. And it's important to observe the development in China to see if it can actually push green hydrogen to hydrogen. So, but is that really the direction green hydrogen is heading to in China? So today I'm going to talk quickly of the policy context of China, and then the market reality as well as the price, so that perhaps to help you to form your own judgment of where the market is heading to. So before we start, it's important to analyze that where is China's hydrogen is heading to in the current policy context. So China's hydrogen policy has been through, in our eyes, 4 stages. It started with focusing on utilizing green hydrogen for its developing a fuel cell vehicle industry, but that has already passed. More and more so, Chinese government and Beijing has seen that green hydrogen as a potential to solving one major problem that from the energy supply side, which is renewable. So we see that green hydrogen's potential to work as an energy system to deal with this renewable overcapacity, or which is for me, overcapacity is a neutral phase for renewable. And so currently, the Chinese government's idea of developing green hydrogen is under not just about fuel cell vehicle, or it is a multi-layer. So on one hand, it sees currently hydrogen as a potential to become a future disruptive industry, light EV, light battery, that it become potentially in 10 years, 20 years, become China's new future growth engine as a new industry with global dominance. On the other hand, of course, we talk about renewable, how they work with China's world-leading renewable resources to become an energy system. And the third is that China sees that green hydrogen's potential for decarbonize its heavy industry in coal-fired power plant, coal-to-chemical industry, metallurgy, iron reduction, and the petrochem refinery. And the fourth is important. China's recent policy also emphasized that green hydrogen could be the future potential of an exporting asset for the country. But the root logic of China's development hydrogen, in our point of view, is to really solving the renewable overcapacity issue. This is a very unique standpoint of China's energy policy compared to the rest of the world in terms of the reason why to develop green hydrogen is because China have a leading world renewable resources. They already built 1.6 gigawatt of renewable, wind and solar, and they plan to double that size in probably 5 to 10 years. And that capacity and that asset is currently not working well with its own electricity system. It can't utilize all this renewable. So where is it heading to? The idea seems to be green hydrogen. But then when it's trickling down with this cascading model, with this cascading investment, so we invest on renewable, then how to deal with it? Besides battery, let's build green hydrogen. But then the green hydrogen, where is it heading to? So in the end, it's about off-taking. And this is a question that for global green hydrogen development is that which market will buy green hydrogen and which sector will buy green hydrogen. I think that this is the key question that's being asked everywhere in the green hydrogen sector. And in China, there are more and more policy are pushing that direction. So initially, the policy design is very much focused on the supply side. But right now, there are more and more policy vehicle and mechanism that helping the offtake of green hydrogen. So what we're talking about is China's iron and steel industry has been already including in the mandatory carbon trading system. So that means that the iron and steel technically have the incentive to utilize green hydrogen, or clean hydrogen probably is more economical, but utilize hydrogen for the iron reduction processes. There are several projects is currently already in place in China. And there is then less so is the chemical industry. It is not included in the mandatory carbon trading market yet, but there is a timeline for that in a few years.
Aidan, Sparrowhawk and Yuki, they're great to get into some of those regional profiles, the growth, the demand, the individual markets as well, narrowing down that APAC region. And then to hear Yuki's look into the hydrogen market in China. And APAC
and Aidan was a very popular speaker. I think he got name-checked in some shape or form by just about every speaker that followed.
And we can confirm he was delighted at that as well, wasn't he?
He was absolutely delighted. He just kept getting name-checked and gave a great talk. I think, I'm going to put it on record, one of the best I've seen from Gasworld Intelligence, basically. Very clear, very concise. And some fantastic growth rates in there, as listeners will have just heard. So a lot, he kind of did exactly what we want to do, set the scene with all the things that are to look forward to in the region and some of the challenges that need to be overcome as well.
Again, as is the case with most of these clips we'll listen to, we could have included so much more, but we just don't have time. We'd be here all evening and we've got Christmas to enjoy. We
have, and you've picked, I think, one from a very tech-heavy session that you moderated.
Yeah, we went into a bit of a tech stage here in the event, and I've picked out this particular clip from Julien Gagneux of Alfa Laval. He joined us in our energy, sustainability and industrial gases session on day one, and I thought it was interesting to get into the cryogenic equipment topic and the challenges that he sees Alfa Laval facing when it comes to decarbonising with CCUS.
Now let's speak about decarbonization with CCUS. So CCUS, for carbon capture, use and storage, as you know it, And these days, we see more and more demand for CCUS. Why? Because with the net zero commitment, we see that for companies, it's more and more difficult to reach the net zero emission goal by 2050. So this is why we help companies by deliver products on the cryogenic side to develop this kind of solution. And because the CO2 is 500 times smaller in the liquid state, this is where we can help regarding the product. And you see here that this is the world demand for CCUS, and you see that there is more and more projects the past last year. Because as I told you before, it's become more and more difficult to reduce the CO2 emission, and now, thanks to CCUS, it's become crucial to use this type of solution. But how we can help at Alfa Laval? This is the solution that we can provide for CCUS. Of course, in the liquid state, but we have centrifugal pump, so that means will be for high flow rate, low and medium pressure, but also for piston pump with low and medium flow rate with high pressure. Just insights and key facts about CCUS and CO2. The idea of bringing the CO2 underground on the ocean for climate change was bring only the late 70s. So this is not new. It's only in the last few years that this idea is really bring on the table. And also, we can use CCUS to create diamonds. So I'm not telling you that you need to invest in CCUS to bring more diamonds on the table. It's just that the company uses CO2 thanks to H2 to create in laboratory some diamonds. We see key challenges. So of course, to develop the CCUS, we need to have big projects. Also align with, of course, the price, because the CO2 fossil, it's competitive, still competitive, and we need to be the same for the CCUS solution. While also ensuring a high quality CO2 purity for some industry to the use of the CO2 that has been captured. And how we can help? In fact, we have some experiences in cryogenic, in fact, more than 50 years, so quite of experiences in the cryogenic side, and we have a huge range of products that can help for CCUS.
Julien Gagneux of Alfa Laval there, and again, that was a great session, wasn't it? We had Pierre Shamsi of Honeywell UOP HSP, Tan Yu Lit of CIMC Emmerich, and Fabio Margheriti of SIAD Machini Impianti. It was great to get all of those technical talks into that one session.
Some strong overlaps there. Disappointed you didn't pick out Tan Yu Lit. I mean, what an energy that guy brought to the session.
When it really needed to be lifted as well, because it had been quite a long morning up by then, wasn't it?
Yeah, he really arrested everyone's attention. But yeah, fantastic session. Great to see all those tech talks delivered.
And then we went into a panel discussion with India and China in focus. Perhaps we'll save that panel session for a separate podcast. We might be able to play that out in full, but there were some great talking points there, wasn't it? And a great panel you had tomorrow. Yeah,
very knowledgeable, comfortable panel, I would say, in terms of how they deliver their insights, particularly someone as esteemed as Professor Richard Bucock of Bucock Advisory. Let's break that into another episode, and I really would encourage everyone to take a listen to that, because we saw a lot of perceptions challenged and a lot of loaded conversations taking place. So a lot to wade through there, I think.
And I also had the chance to speak to Richard Bucock following the event and did a bit of an interview with him. It turned out to be a 10-minute long interview because he had so much to say and so many insights.
I saw you go off and I didn't see you come back.
So that will be on the GasWorld website very soon. So again, we should urge listeners to go gasworld.com and watch that when they can. And then we went into day 2, and again we started with... Again, it was another slightly technology-heavy session, but more so in the specialty gases and supply side of things. And we heard from Andy Tuan of Links Consulting, Nishant Shah of INOX Air Products, and Tim Myers of PDC Machines. I think that was a interesting panel for me to moderate and chair as well. Plenty of insights into the specialty gases industry from Andy Tuan.
Yep.
But
sadly, we don't have his audio, do we?
Sadly, we don't have his audio. So
you had to be there.
You really had to be there. So that's a come and get me for next year, isn't it? So I've picked up this clip from Nishant Shah, a couple of clips actually.
Hot off the heels of his award wins, or INOX's award win the night before.
Yes, the gasworld Oscars, as he liked to call them. A couple of clips here, and he discussed rising to the specialty gas for solar opportunities in India.
The global energy demand across the world is close to 592 exajoules. Now, 1 exajoule is 278 terawatt. 1 terawatt is 1,000 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt is 1,000 megawatt. And you can just understand that how huge is the energy demand of the world. And when we talk about clean energy, we talk about two terms: fossil-based, non-fossil-based. And actually, solar is one of the ways to go towards generating energy in a non-fossil based. But today, it will be interesting to see, after all the work that the world is doing, all the countries, all the climate policies, still 87% of the global energy is coming from fossil based. And only 13% is coming from the non-fossil. Interesting to see what is the breakdown of this 13%. 2.7% is contributed by hydro. Almost 5.2% is contributed by nuclear. And you can still see solar has not yet come, correct? So, as I said, when I started to work in solar, I thought that, okay, I'm doing a great job, we have a great market, and it may not be so. The good news is, what Aidan said yesterday, the opportunity of the gas is 95.5 billion globally, and APAC is close to 28% of it. And someone asked yesterday to Aidan, and Aidan just segued the question to me, what is the specialty gases need in APAC? So I'm going to come to that. If any one of you is retaining the copy of the GasWorld booklet, my request is to go to page number 14, if you have it. But if you don't, you can later on have a look at it. You can keep that page open at your end. I'll come to that. So I said, this is towards hydro and nuclear, and then comes the other renewables. And in that other renewables, solar, biomass, wind, geothermal, all of that comes into the picture. So the thought process over here is that this is the energy demand. This is the various source. These are the non-fossils. And in that, this is where solar as one tiny spot comes in, okay? Now, if we just go out that, okay, this is so far understanding the energy. Now, what about solar? How much of solar is happening? Generally, APAC would follow global, correct? Because global is the more developed economies. APAC is a diverse economy with variety of the countries at different variations of maturity of development. But in solar, you would be proud to see what APAC is doing. So if I look at the global solar of 2024, 597 gigawatt was installed across the world. 600 gigawatt, just to remember the name. And how much is APAC? 70%. So I must say that this room over here is shaping the industry towards the solar. This room over here basically has the responsibility, has the opportunity to get the maximum out of it when it comes to growth, creating infrastructure, joining hands with each other, creating new technologies, innovations, whatever you may say. The money lies here, okay? And that is 417, almost 70%. But our entire specialty gases basically comes in the solar cell manufacturing. And what this chart shows to you is where is India in terms of the current capacity, what you see over here, the current capacity of each of the backward integration, and where is government expecting the country to go or reach by 2028 in the coming 3 years, which may look very small, maybe in comparison to the lens of China, I agree. But if you look at it as a country of India, it's a mammoth growth in the entire infrastructure that we are doing. We are reducing the dependency of imports. We are planning to become self-sufficient. And what you can see is still by 2028, if the modules are going to be 200 and the cells are still going to be 100, that means 100 gigawatt is still going to be imported. It's not probably happening in India. So that's the level of space that we are talking. Okay? Now, what exactly just go into the solar cells? Now, before I just go there, maybe I'll draw the attention. Solar cells, I'm sure people are aware, there are 4 generations of solar cells. The generation 1 can be also called as PERC, and the latest is also perovskite, where the trials are happening. Now, this entire solar cell, when we talk, there are various technology. I just understood there are 6 of them: PERC, PERT, TOPCon, HJT, metal wrap, integrated back contact, and tandem. Now, I didn't know all of that. Thanks to GasWorld, I did a lot of homework. But only 3 of them are quite famous today, which is HJT, TOPCon, PERC. PERC is an old technology. TOPCon is where the major investments are happening. So what you see over here is a series of 12 gases, is a series of various packages, various formats, and I'm sure everyone on the table, someone or the other, you identify, oh, I'm into the business of the T50s and T75. I'm in the business of ammonia. I'm in the business of supply chain. I'm in the business of logistics. So these are the 12 gases. And these gases, what role do they play in this entire solar cell? Somebody asked me, so basically, what does gas do? I mean, how are gases contributing? So basically, our gases have few applications, 4 or 5 of them. One very common application is that basically it helps in more absorption of the light. Second, it helps in reducing the reflection of the light. Third, it helps the wafer surface, cleaning piece. Fourth, it helps in protecting the wafer surface from contamination. Fifth, it creates a certain p-n junction by which the conductivity of the certain cells or the silicon is fast. So I'm just trying to give you a very broad estimate about what do gases do, and each of these gases today play a very critical role. I'm sure we all have heard about an adage about detailing, correct? They say God lies in the details. They also say devil also lies in the details. And this is where the gas industry contributes, because the detailing, when I go to a solar cell, the amount of impurity specification that is being asked to us, they're not worried about the purity part of it. They don't ask me what is before the decimal. They ask me what is after the decimal. And that detailing can actually create a lot of impact. I mean, many of you are on the procurement side. We have this ABC analysis, right? Where a product, whatever you're buying, how critical are they? A is the top critical. So I'm sure when it comes to the entire cost stack, I think I heard Andy say that in the semiconductor, the gases are 9%. But when it comes to solar, I have understood it is less than 1% as a cost stack to the solar module. Less than 1%. But when it comes to criticality, guys, we can create havoc if we don't supply the right gas, okay? The amount of money a solar company may lose by us supplying an incorrect gas can be huge. And I think that is what the onus and the responsibility of this room is in the way we contribute towards this clean energy. So having said that, I would like to say that, India is, a good picture, but coming to, as I said, I asked you, is anybody having that booklet, page 14? Anybody, hands up? No? Okay, fair enough. If you look at what Aidan said, Aidan explained us fantastically about the entire gas opportunity, and he named oxygen, nitrogen takes more than 90%. There is helium, there is hydrogen, there is various gases. If I look at over there, the entire opportunity stack, 3% is coming under others, okay? That 3% of others is where we sit. This is where our gases, the specialty gases sit. And I'm happy to share, if this excites you, the opportunity size, what we see based on the 2024 install of the solar is a 500 million opportunity. I hope this is exciting. This is worth having the GasWorld conference. This is worth everyone flying over here. This is worth serving this sector. We are very excited when I look at this particular thing. And in the entire gas stack, when you see country-wise, that if it is a 28 or 27 billion, India is 1.7 billion, 6% contribution. But I must say that when it comes to the solar, India probably would be more than 15% based on the thrust on the solar gigawatts that are getting installed. So this is my message to all the suppliers, that you need to be economical if you want to do business in India.
Nishant, Shah of INOX Air Products there.
I have to say, Tom, that's another speaker that I felt really grabbed attention on stage, commanded that stage. There was probably, I mean, all of our speakers were fantastic. That's not to diminish any of them, but there were two with Tanyu Lit and then Nishant Shah that just brought this energy. They were so happy to be on that stage. They just woke you up if you were in danger of nodding off.
And I like the audience participation from Nishant as well, where he had asked, what she guesses on these figures. So it's great to hear that, and great
really
to hear the opportunity in the solar market for the specialty gases industry and those uses for specialty gas and solar.
He really spelled that out. I made a lot of notes from that talk. Yeah.
India seems a lot of potential there, and this is a topic that I'm sure we're going to revisit throughout 2026.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then into the second session of day 2. This was another of those panel discussions, and this one on APAC's role in global industrial gas supply chains. You had another great panel there for that one.
I did. Richard Bukop returned for that one. We also had Vineet Kushal from INOX CVA, and we had the return of Yuki Yu from Energy Iceberg, fresh from her scene setter in day 1. She came back to join the panel for a discussion without presentations. Again, we touched a lot on China and India. It was inevitable we'd do that, but we tried to look at the whole APAC region and its role on the global industrial gas and energy stage, if you like. So covered a lot of ground in there, a lot of question of the day feedback, some audience participation. Again, too much to put in this episode. I think that has to be a breakout one, Tom.
Yeah, it was a full hour discussion, wasn't it? So keep an eye out on the 1895 podcast feed to get that in its entirety.
Over this festive season.
Yeah, a festive special, we could call it. And then rounding off the event, you and I took to the stage, didn't we?
We didn't want to, but...
No, our hand was sort of forced, but... I thought this was an interesting presentation for me to present. A lot of data in there which we've seen throughout the year, and this was discussing GWGI's Risk Watch and the threats and the opportunities that the industrial gases market faces. We've, of course, seen a lot of this data throughout the year, but it was good to be able to break that down and almost a bullet point it into that half an hour that we were allowed.
I think it was. I'm just, as we're recording this, I'm just thinking if it's not too much, that might make for a good standalone episode. A short one, it's only sort of 20 minutes, but that might make for an interesting episode in the new year. If we start to look at what happened and what's ahead, that could be a good one. But yeah, we looked at 3 to 4 core risk areas in the industry, didn't we? What possibility of a helium shortage 5.0, the rise of silent substitutes in the CO2 sector and demand erosion, PFAS impact on so many industries, but particularly the industrial gases business in ways that you probably wouldn't imagine. And we also touched on medical oxygen, didn't we? And whilst we haven't covered that at Risk Watch this year, it was more to say there is a potential risk here, and from our industry sentiment analysis, not everyone thinks that those gaps in the supply chain have been successfully plugged. So 3 to 4 risk areas to watch. And I actually had a couple of people coming up to me afterwards to say how interesting that was, and it's a good thing to keep an eye on those risks. So pretty good, I think.
And I had a few questions on the CO2 substitutions as well. So people are clearly interested. So, and we should say that GWGI Risk Watch is available to GasWorld subscribers. They can just go
download
on the website and download that for free. Well worth doing. And that brought our event to an end. Whistle-stop tour of that event here on this podcast. But hugely successful, hugely informative. And
what were your key takeaways? I've cut across you there, Tom. But what did you leave the event feeling? Apart from tired.
As someone who's not been in the region since our event in Kuala Lumpur 2 years ago, it's maybe quite easy to overlook, especially here in Europe. As a region, it's quite easy to not fully understand the opportunities that there are. So I think that's what the takeaway for me was, that there is this huge potential in the APAC region, and is an area that we really do need to be taking seriously when it comes to some of these growing markets and these growing trends as well. How about you?
Yes, similar. I think for me, what stood out across the 2.5 to 3 days was very much the sense of nuance, and this came out a lot in the 2 panel sessions. I think, similar to what you're saying, you can overlook a lot of things. You can probably have some preconceived ideas around the APAC region and how bullish it is, but actually there's a lot more going on under the hood, so to speak. And we saw some perceptions challenged, didn't we? We think in the West, or we've increasingly thought in the West, that the electrolyzer and the hydrogen market in China is absolutely flying. We saw that challenged by Yuki with a lot of data from on the ground. We'd put China and India together in the same bracket in those panel discussions, and then we were sort of corrected in many ways by saying, well, look, China's not a disruptor anymore, it's a force. India is a disruptor, and it's 20 years behind China. So, we were corrected. I think it was the complexity and the devil was in the detail, and that shone through across the 2.5 days in both good ways and bad ways.
And that also concludes our event schedule for the year, doesn't it? A busy
it
year,
does, yeah.
5 events.
Yeah.
So we do it all again next year.
Well, we do, yeah. Did we both do all 5? I think we did, didn't we?
I think we did,
yeah. What a year, yeah. A grueling year in many ways, but think of those insights that we've learned across that time as well. CO2, helium, APAC, spec gas, so much going on.
So much going on, and there's going to be so much going on the 1895 podcast over this festive period as well, because we have those 2 panel sessions. We'll be back again in the new year with a look back on 2025 in hydrogen, and so many fresh interviews and insights too, won't we? So please do like, follow and share the 1895 podcast, and we'll be back again next time.